recently introduced addition. It's worthy of consideration. We haven't seen legislative language. In order to understand how much revenue it will raise, we have to see legislative language so it can be appropriately evaluated. Hopefully that will be forthcoming from the Senate sometime soon.
Right now, the Helms and Hyde Amendment are not included in the reconciliation bill, yet Democratic Senator Joe Manchin says that it's a non-starter. Is this something that the House would consider to put into the bill as an amendment?
We haven't had a conversation about that. Nothing is agreed upon until everything is agreed upon. We'll see what the final agreement looks like. I'll go back on this side, yeah.
With all due respect, how can you compare a series of very short-term programs, 1, 2, 3 years, with the Great Society or the New Deal, which created programs that we still enjoy today?
We don't envision any of these programs being short-lived if they are lifting up the American people. And let's talk about what we're focused on in terms of the Build Back Better Act and in partnership with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Agreement. The largest single federal investment in infrastructure in the history of the Republic. Not this year, not this decade, not this century, the history of the Republic. That alone should be transformative. That's going to happen under President Biden's leadership. That's building back better in a transformative and historic way. Full stop. But that's not the end of the story. Even though that infrastructure agreement is going to create millions of good paying jobs. And then if you partner that with the Build Back Better Act, which is going to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, expand access to high-quality, affordable health care in the United States of America, give us the ability to negotiate lower drug prices for everyday Americans, which we've been fighting for a long period of time, and should be part of the Build Back Better Act. That's going to drop prescription drug prices for our seniors and for Americans who right now pay more for life-saving drugs than any other developed country in the world for the same drug manufactured in the same location. I kind of think that's transformative and historic, but it doesn't end there. We also are working on expanding access to Medicaid for every single eligible American, despite the fact that you have 10 or 11 red states that have intentionally excluded seniors, the poor, the sick, and the afflicted. I kind of think that's a little bit transformative, but it doesn't end there. We're looking at expanding access to Medicare benefits in some way, shape, or form, in a way that people have been contemplating for decades, but have not been able to accomplish. Yet it doesn't end there. We're also talking about strengthening families and children, not just low-income families, but working families and middle-class families. How are we doing that? The enhanced and expanded child tax credit, which has lifted already in a few months almost half the American children out of poverty, and has provided additional assistance to working families and middle-class families to pay for things like their utility bills or child care costs or educational expenses or food or housing. But it doesn't end there. We're also joining the family of nations that currently provide child care in a robust way. We don't do it in America. The Build Back Better Act will do it for the first time in American history. Temporarily, we did some things during World War II. This would be something that we can put into place, setting us on a permanent trajectory. It doesn't end there. We're going to expand access to 3- and 4-year-old children across America through universal pre-K, which the academic literature is very clear. lays a foundation for children to grow up and be successful in pursuing the American dream. It doesn't end there. We'll probably spend $190 billion to strengthen home health care in America, access to it for those loved ones of American families who are sick and afflicted. And we're going to lift up the home health care workers as well. But it doesn't end there. We're going to confront the climate crisis with the fierce urgency of now. There is no planet B. The largest federal investment in addressing the climate crisis in American history. I kind of think that's a little bit transformative, but it doesn't even end there. We're going to spend and invest over $100 billion in the creation and preservation of affordable housing, including the largest federal investment in lifting up public housing in the history of the Republic. I kind of think that's transformative and historic.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Good morning. On this proposal for the wealth tax, I know we don't have specifics or even if this is going to be part of the proposal here, but since it appears that Democrats have had to pare back some of these other proposals, vision, dental, paid family leave, et cetera here, why should we not believe that this is just something that you're throwing to the left, who pushed for taxing the ultra wealthy? And if you can't get some of these other things, throwing this in at the last minute isn't something that you're giving to them who appealed for that push to tax the wealthy.
We're not making decisions based on what the moderates want, what the left wants, what the center wants. We're making decisions based on what is good for the American people. How do we create millions of good-paying jobs in the context of health care? How do we expand access to high-quality, affordable health care? And, of course, dealing with the climate crisis and strengthening America's children and families. These are how decisions are being made. What is in the best interest of everyday Americans?
Chairman?
Let me go to the back, and then I'll go right to you.
This bill, as you mentioned, is designed to tackle climate change, which, of course, is exacerbated by human activity. And it also provides the child tax credit, which provides new incentives for people to have children. Wondering if you're worried long-term, if there are concerns that the package in its totality is encouraging population growth, which would then worsen the climate crisis.
Well, it's not something that I've contemplated in terms of the interactivity between population growth and the climate crisis. I mean, I think a broad and increasing coalition of Americans, not just Democrats or progressives, sees the need to address the climate crisis with the fierce urgency of now. The military, under the last 3 different presidential administrations, has been very clear that the climate crisis is perhaps the most significant national security issue that we need to address because of famine and drought and the challenges that are caused by population shifts in migration. I think everything that we're doing in the context of the Build Back Better Act, addressing the climate crisis in a sustainable, resilient, and green fashion are all incredibly positive for the country and for the planet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A two-part question, if I may. The Medicaid expansion concerns in the Senate. How do you write that provision so it doesn't reward red states who refuse to expand? And secondly, on paid leave, could you live with this bill if that provision has to come out to make the numbers work?
Well, let me yield to Pete, who's, of course, one of our appropriators in addition to being the vice chair. I think all of these issues are on the table. We're working through them. We're a coalition. We're not a cult. We have people who have different perspectives. All of those perspectives are being heard and respected. And at the end of the day, I think we will land in a manner that brings everyone along and we achieve the highest common denominator.
Yeah, with respect to paid family leave, the chairman and the speaker have encouraged the caucus not to draw red lines. We're having these conversations. This is going to be a transformative package, and no matter what is included or what details or the number of weeks that are included, So we're going to continue to have those conversations and then see what the package holds. With respect to Medicaid expansion, this is something that's important to help the people in this country. So we don't need to look at this as whether they're in blue states or red states or expansion states or non-expansion states. This is about what policies we can enact to help those individuals across the country who don't have health care, who are poor, who are having difficulty and can't afford their medical expenses. Those are the policies that we're looking to enact and that we're looking to change to help the people in our communities and throughout this country. That's what we're focused on, is how can we look at this, take the ACA expansion to the next level and focus across the country on what's best for kids, what's best for our communities, what's best for those folks who meet the threshold of Medicaid, so we can provide them the health care services that they need.
Just to be clear, paid leave is down to number of weeks, not whether it's in or out entirely?
Well, I've read the reporting that's talked about it going down. We're going to continue to allow the space of the negotiators to have those conversations, and we'll see. As the speaker said, 90% of this is not just agreed to, but it's written, and that's an important component. And so the remaining details, the caucus will get read out on when it's appropriate.
Is there something on this side? Or? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you acknowledged, billionaire's tax is just one of the many things the caucus is now considering as a revenue source. In that discussion, is a constitutional challenge also being discussed as something that might even delay implementation of the bill or just cause any other complication?
Well, the billionaire's tax was briefly discussed in the caucus meeting earlier today. No one raised the issue of a constitutional challenge. We are clear that we need to still consider a range of revenue opportunities, and that corporate America shouldn't be left or let off the hook. If you recall that when the GOP tax scam was put into place, initially the rates were at 35%. And corporate America came to the Hill and said, we need to be more competitive internationally, and if you can get us to 25%, that will do the job. That's what corporate America said to us. And for whatever reason, my Republican colleagues, as part of their continuing effort to support the lifestyles of the rich and shameless, blew past the 25% number and dropped it all the way down to 21. So now the effective corporate tax rate, the rate that they actually pay, is in the single digits. The effective corporate tax rate for multinational companies that are anchored in the other G7 countries, the other developed economies in the world, is about 23%. That's their effective tax rate. And ours is in the single digits. So I'm hopeful that some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, or perhaps most relevant to this discussion, on the other side of the Capitol, can see fit to making sure that corporations, companies in America pay their fair share while still maintaining their competitive advantage.
Is the work requirement for child tax credit off the table now?
That's a question that you probably have to raise with some of my colleagues in the Senate who have initially put it on the table. It's not something that I think.
No, they won't say.
I don't believe it's anything that members of the House Democratic Caucus will support.
Is there a commitment to vote on the infrastructure bill even if the larger bill, the BBB, is not in bill form and not being acted on back to back?
We need an ironclad agreement with respect to the Build Back Better Act. I think there's uniform consensus around that point. Beyond that, I think I'll yield to the Speaker and to Leader Hoyer in terms of timing and the strategic approach. Last question? I'm sorry.
Senator Manchin held an event
to the president to that being in the bill. Speaker Pelosi has obviously said that she wants that reporting requirement for certain bank accounts. Is that something that you think would be okay if it's taken out, or do you think that there's going to be a push from House Democrats to review it?
Well, we have to work out the right balance in the context of making sure that we don't overreach in the context of everyday Americans, the vast majority of whom, I think it's north of 95% of everyday Americans who are salaried employees or work 9-to-5 jobs, pay their taxes because of deductions that are taken out on a weekly basis from their checks. And we are going to continue to uplift that and respect that. But at the same time, I'll yield to Pete on this, at the same time, we do need to close the tax gap, which, by some estimates, hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, that tax avoidance is largely taking place by the wealthiest amongst us. We've got super lawyers and accountants and are engaged in a regular practice of trying to avoid paying taxes that they lawfully owe. And I do think we have to find a pathway to close that tax gap. Figuring out where the common ground is in the House and the Senate is an important part of the process. One of the issues that probably remain on the table, but I'm confident that we will be able to find common ground.
Just on that point, members have raised similar concerns about this as a burden to small financial institutions. We understand that, but as the chairman mentioned, this is about tax avoidance. This is about making sure that we're doing everything we can to avoid that, or to reduce and eliminate that tax avoidance that many well-off Americans undertake. And so that's the focus. Now we'll let Chairman Wyden and Chairman Neal, work on the details of what that can look like. But within that broader category of revenue, reducing the tax avoidance that we know many well-off Americans undertake is something that is important to the package and critical for us to include. But we understand the concern and we're aware of it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.